Hey, excuse me. Hey, South Coaster. I almost forgot that I had this mic hooked up. I'm not sure if I'm even loud enough to be heard right now. I'm still not quite sure what I want to do with this. My guitars are on the left side, and those are scratch tracks. We just recorded this other part this evening after work, and I'm going to go back and re-record my tracks. I think for this part, since I've got that lead lick in there, I'm probably going to just double my own guitars and pan them hard left and right, and then move those leads a little bit closer to the center. Of course, I've got to get my vocals tracked, and we need to re-record the drums because these drums are nowhere near as intense as what we had in our last practice. Speaking of, let me figure out my life here real quick. I'll post a link in the chat if you would care to hear our most recent rehearsal of this song live. Take me a second to find it here. I've got a fledgling second channel for my musical endeavors. And there you go. Check that out. Eddie, the drummer, he went a bit ham that night, and I want to re-record the drums the same way that he did. Again, my apologies for my voice. I've got something that I've come up with today after being around somebody sick at work, I think. Let me start back from the front. I'm just comping David's guitars from today and trying to get the best performance out of this I can. And, you know, I've not even auditioned any of the other parts here. I guess I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't listen to him. I do like that last take that he did, but even just looking at the waveforms, that just looks like a stronger one. I think I'm going to go with my gut and just keep that. Let's move on. Like that. I want to check out this other part and audition it at least. I think I prefer this first take with the last half of the second take. It's got a softer attack coming into that section and helps to keep the mellow vibe that I was going for there, because it does get a bit more aggressive afterwards. Oh hey Scott, thanks for joining in. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep tabs of what's going on this other screen. Give me just a second here. Yeah, it's two completely different guitar performances. My guitar part is on the left, and it's just the scratch tracks. The guitar on the right is what we recorded this afternoon. That's David. Let's see. I'm definitely looking forward to recording the vocals on this, and I'll definitely live stream that as well. It should be a fun one. Yeah, I think I like that. I definitely prefer the softer attack on this green take and how it transitions into the more prominent note there at the end. You start back the transition into this section. Kind of curious to hear his other take on that. I thought that was a bit strong coming in there. May be fine though. Let's just audition it and see. Got an anomaly there that I think I want to try to fix real quick. And if you are just tuning in, my apologies again for my voice. I don't know what's up with it. Okay, that was an automatic comp right there. That was not right, so let me fix this. And let's see, that's when he goes into his quieter part. That should be the right track for that. We'll figure this out. Now this part coming up, this is not going to sound right because of my scratch guitar tracks, which is just something I threw it together real quick so that the drummer could have something other than a metronome to record to. I tried to delete part of my performance and just fade it in at a part, which is probably going to be wrong. I guess I should stop ruining this and just let it go, but we'll see what it sounds like. I love that part. Yeah, that snare, that is a 14-inch Pearl Joey Jordison model with attack, what heads do I have on it? Attack Red Baron heads. And the snare was recorded with, I've got an Earthworks DM20, I think it is, on the top, and an Audix i5 on the bottom. I'm not sure how I feel about his performance there. Let's audition the other and see how that feels. Actually, I think I like the other one better. Let's see, we'll just get rid of that split and paint this back out. I'll have to fix this later when I re-record my own parts, but it's weird for me not hearing something right there. I'm just trying to remember what we did here. This was just a few hours ago, so it's not a lot to remember, but we retook a few things. The rest of this should be fine as is. Definitely going to have to do some volume automation right there, but I need to keep reminding myself that I'm not at the mixing phase just yet. Florida. Hey, thanks for joining in. It's always encouraging whenever I do a completely unscheduled live stream, which is, they're usually unscheduled. I just wasn't feeling good, and for whatever reason decided to come in here and try to work on something and stream. So I'm always excited, like I said, to see people show up. That may be the quickest comp I've ever done. Now, I'm probably going to need to go back and do some editing on that, at least a little bit, just for timing. But overall, that's not sounding bad. I wish you guys could hear the lyrics right now. Let's give this another pass from the front and see what it feels like. There's a little something back here that was bothering me that I want to look at again. Wanted to double check this part and see what that other take sounded like. I probably already did that and just don't remember. South Coaster, the bass, actually it got a bit more gritty like that. This is DI. I'm using Duality Bass Studio from Audio Assault, and I switched cabinets and it really brought out more of that top end. So if I go back to the original cab that I was using, it's got a lot more bottom end and a little bit less grit. So just for the sake of soloing that for a second, I did some work on the pedal with running this serial drive and filtering out what section I wanted distorted. But just check out how much of a difference it makes just by changing the cab on this. Find that moving part here. Now switch to this other cab. I think it's got to do with this additional mic. It looks like it's placed on the cone, so now I'm kind of curious to experiment and move this more towards the edge and see how that changes things. Actually, I kind of dig that. Let's hear how that sounds in context. heard something weird back here. And now I'm not sure if I'm hearing it anymore. Third measure after the build. I think it's right in there. There's a little bit of a... Yeah, I think I see it now. There is a gap in the playing right there, and I think I'm hearing that. It's a bit much. Let me try painting in some of this other take and see if that satisfies my ear. That's kind of weird. That sounds almost like he changed pickups, but I know he didn't. Let's just try to eliminate that little bit. I think that may be passable. Take that out a bit further. Try to get that to where we're a little bit more even on the waveform on the outside, on the outbound side. It's gonna be a tough one to sell. That felt pretty good. Let's see, do I have this working right? I want to see if I can play this live. This is just a clip from us rehearsing this the other day here at the house. This was recorded with a cell phone, so the audio quality is not the best, but we'll see what happens. Blow that up a bit. I'll be the little guy over here on the left side. Oh, the reason the vocals are not audible here is because we use in-ears for practice, so just pretend that you can hear me singing. Mistake there on the transition. You could kind of hear me screaming there at the end. I'm definitely looking forward to getting those vocals tracked for this. The song's coming together really well. The name of the song is When Are We Leaving? And it's just kind of a made-up story, but at the same time it's about me and social anxiety and just how I don't mind performing in front of a crowd, but I hate being in a crowd. And my wife is very much used to me asking within seconds of us getting anywhere, when are we leaving? I guess I'm done with what I wanted to do this evening. I wasn't really expecting it to happen this quickly. Does anybody have any questions that maybe I can answer? Or, I mean, ask me anything, as the saying goes, whether it be Reaper related or what the heck have you been doing the past 4 or 5 months, Mike, or whatever you'd like to ask. I'm having a hard time reading that because these, what do you call these things? These emoji things are in the way in YouTube. There we go. Thought about screen at symbol height. I'm not sure I understand the question, South Coaster. Screen at symbol height? Yeah, I'm totally not sure if I'm reading that correct. What guitar effects am I using? In this case, for my guitar, I'm using audio, what's the word I'm looking for? Audio Assault Amp Locker, primarily because it was just really easy to get a, let's see, that was Tone X I was experimenting with, but I didn't use it. So I'm using Amp Locker on my channel, just running the British gain. I'm not running a whole heck of a lot of a signal chain. If you are talking about in real life, I have got a Boss Katana 100-watt head that goes into a, what is it, Walrus Audio Mira compressor, followed by a, what is it, Electro Harmonics Overlord overdrive pedal. I have an Abasi Pathos pedal, or however that's pronounced, that I very seldom use, and that's just more when I go into death metal territory. Then I've got a noise gate and a, gosh, I don't remember what's on my own pedal board. Hang on a second, let me go look. The one I was missing, the Ocean's 11 that I use for shimmering reverb. I don't run a whole lot of effects. I'm very much old school in both my production methods. Gosh, I'm really at a loss for words this evening. I'm old school about just about everything, so you won't see me using much that's very heavy as far as effects in Reaper, and it's the same way with my amp. I run a single channel, and I alter my drive just by rolling off the volume on my guitar. And yeah, I use like a mid-gain crunch type of channel, and I've got an overdrive to give it a little bit more bite, and then that distortion for more bite if I need it, that I very seldom use. Yeah, my live setup, I wish that I had more cable. I would move my camera over there. I'm running, let me change my screens real quick here. Oh, I'm not really in focus. Let me fix that. I use manual lenses, so sometimes I don't get this quite right. There we go. So I'm running a couple of these guys, but I just got one set up right now. I need to get a wireless transmitter so I can move around the studio and still show stuff. But yeah, my rig for my guitar is very simple. Like I said, single channel with mid-gain crunch with some overdrive and some compression, and that is about it. As far as my guitar, I've got the Ibanez Itchy 10, which I love this. It weighs about 4.5 pounds, and I don't know if you know this, but I'm old. I will be 48 this year, and being able to hold 4 pounds, you know, I can play a 3 or 4 hour show with no trouble whatsoever, because this does not hurt my back. But as far as, let me get back into position here, sorry. As far as my signal chain for things in Reaper, I can show you that. So my guitar on this, I do it very similar to how I do in real life. So I've got an overdrive and a little bit, I'm sorry, not an overdrive, that is a compressor with a little bit of overdrive going into the equivalent of like a JCM 800 type of tone. And I'm running a couple of, well, it looks like, I don't know why I did that. That's weird. I probably just didn't bother changing anything here and just left it on the default cabs, because I'm running both of these at, oh, I see what I'm doing here. I'm running two of the same cabs with SM57s, but I've got one off axis and one on axis and kind of mixed. I'm running nothing after that, and the only thing, I am running a little bit of EQ to roll off some low end on that guitar going on the way end, and I had a bit of a gate just to help clean up any noise. I'm pretty sure I did that same thing across my 3 tracks. I did 3 tracks just because there's a couple of parts that I need to tail, like I need the tail to trail over into the next section, so I can't physically play that live. I actually have Dave do one of those parts for me live. As for what we did with Dave, we literally just threw this together. Like, we both work at the same clinic, and we just came over after work today so he could record his parts. I did not spend any time dialing in a tone for him. I just threw something on here so we could get it recorded. So I'm running the Prestige 1959 in Amp Locker with the default settings. You can see everything is at noon. I didn't touch the cab at all, just left it where it sits. I did put a compressor in front of it to help level out his taps. Let me catch up in chat real quick here. And as for the bass, my effects chain that I'm running there, a very similar type of setup. I was running an EQ on the front end with the natural tone just to roll off a little bit of the low end because it was a bit much, but I think I may let some more of that get through. I wanted to, you know, there's the theory about what do you want to be the lowest thing in your mix, and I tend to favor the kick. I like to have a big boomy kick that punches you in the chest pretty much, and I wanted to make sure that the bass was more prominent around, say, 100 to 150 hertz, with the kick being more prominent below that. So then I run that into duality, which I've got a gate. At that time, my setup was on the opposite side of the room. This was just last week when we recorded the bass, and I was finding that I was getting a lot of noise through the bass DI, but it was because my new computer was over on this other side, and it was just way too close to the bass. I have moved it to the other side, and that has eliminated that problem. So I'm running a noise gate into a drive pedal. This plugin is interesting. I think it may still be on sale right now, and this is not a paid commercial, but let's go take a look real quick. It was on sale for like $5 last week. This may take me a second because of dyslexia, so I'm kind of just looking for the picture, sadly. I don't even see it. Let's see. I guess I can search. Yeah, it's on sale now for $5. I will post a link in the chat. Now, I gotta admit, this plugin is a little bit difficult to use until you realize that you can. I hate that I keep saying I despise when people say that all the time, but I'm stumbling over my words today. When you realize that each section you can run in parallel by changing the mix, it kind of changes things. That's someone had asked me on Facebook, where I'd posted some videos in one of the Reaper groups, why I'm not splitting my bass into two different tracks. My answer was something to the effect of, a lot of people do that just because YouTube told them to. It's not 100% necessary. It can be very beneficial if you need to process the lower end of your bass different from the upper end of the bass. But in this case, with me running through Duality, I'm able to change my mix. And what I'm doing on this serial drive, yes, it's serial versus a parallel one that you can run, but I can just change the mix level, and I'm able to filter. This left side is showing my high pass and low pass filter of what's going into the pedal, and then what's going out after being affected by the drive, and I can mix in how much or how little that I'd like to have of that. The same thing when you're going through the amp. If you wanted to keep some of the natural tone of your bass, you can just roll down the mix knob and have that running essentially in parallel to what you've got going on with the amp. You got a few cabs that you can choose from, and you can also load your own IRs if you've got some other bass cabs that you like to use. There are outboard effects that you've got here. So there's an EQ, chorus, compressor, and a limiter. I am running some compression on this, and I was working with the EQs to bring out a little bit more of that upper end that I like to have. And then again, you've got the parallel drive that you can use, but I've got that disabled. After that, I'm running into PSP Infinistrip, and I failed to mention this on my guitars. I tend to run PSP Infinistrip on all of my... Let me make this a little bit larger. Maybe you guys can see it a bit better. Oh, hey, John. It's fancy seeing you here. What time is it there, man? It must be late 30 for you. But I tend to use PSP Infinistrip on everything. I don't know, I've really thinned the herd as far as plugins go, and I have become a bit of a channel strip addict. I just find that I mix a lot faster if I stick to a handful of well-known plugins and just use things instead of, and this is terrible to say with me being a YouTube personality of sorts, I tend to not follow after everything that every YouTuber is pushing. Like right now, the Tone X1 pedal is the big thing, and you'll see practically every YouTuber under the sun that's pushing it. It's not that there's anything wrong with it, but I find that if I'm constantly chasing after everything that's new and shiny, I'm always looking for the next greatest thing, and I'm at a point in my life to where if it's not going to significantly enhance or improve my workflow, make things faster, or produce some kind of a sound or effect that I don't already have, I'm not even really trying stuff anymore. I'm sticking to tools that I know, and I've said this on some videos before. When you think about some of the great mix engineers of the past, let's say 70s, 80s, and even some of the 90s, and probably today a little bit too, they got a very consistent sound, but you also have to consider they worked with the same console for decades, so they just knew it inside and out. They knew how to exploit things on it, so to speak. They knew its limitations, and they knew workarounds, and I'm finding that as I start to practice those same methods, my mixes are getting better, and the speed of my mixes is improving exponentially because I know how the tools are going to operate, and I just have an expectation of how it's going to respond with a certain material. So I'm going out of Duality and into Infinistrip and treating it as if I'm actually mixing into a console. If you're not familiar with Infinistrip, I've talked about it before, but I can continue to add more things into the rack to the right. I guess it's kind of similar to the Slate virtual mix rack, which I've never used, but that's what people say it's comparable to. I've got a handful of different preamps that I can choose from, and there's subtle differences in the saturation and EQ curve, I guess if that's the right word, that they've each got their own sound to them, and it took me a while to understand that, but the more that I've used it and just experimented with different things through them, I'm finally at a point to where I can hear the difference between the preamps, and it's kind of cool. It's almost a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in that you can start to make much more intelligent mix decisions as you start to hear those little things that some people may not pick up on, but the cumulative effect of all these little things can make something magical happen. Going out of that preamp into a filter, I'm rolling off around 96 hertz or so. I can't say that I sat there and tried to pinpoint that. I just wanted to make sure that my bass was higher than my kick in frequency. Going from that into a fast compressor. This is a FET compressor that would be akin to an 1176. I don't know if it's normal to use something like that on the bass, but I like to use that to really help level out the bass and give it a bit more even tone. Oh, you have an answer for my OBS question. Let me hop into Discord and see what I missed. Switching scenes, old instances unloaded. Nested just like I do with the others. That is actually a smart move. I think I will try that. Thank you for that suggestion. That's kind of what I was thinking, was that something wasn't being released, or once the scenes were switching. But what you explained there makes sense. For anybody that cares what John is talking about, I had posted a question on my Discord server, which I'm going to assume that all of you guys are on there. If not, there should be a link already in the description. But I had an issue in OBS where when I switched scenes, like going from my Reaper scene to this full screen, or if I go to this full screen without camera or this full screen with camera, my restream, which is what I'm using to get the sound out of Reaper. Any of you who are interested in streaming, I have monitor effects set up. And in monitor effects, I've got Morphit, which I hardly ever use because I tend to not mix on headphones, but I've got Restream. I run that in the monitor effects so that it's available for every project, but it doesn't actually affect my outbound sound. And I've got the same plugin Restream in OBS to receive from Reaper. Anyways, I will try that a bit later. Needless to say, I can't change it in the middle of the stream. And then I've got an EQ, and finally I've got Reacomp. This is being used to duck the bass ever so slightly in favor of the kick, which I may end up taking that off after I get further into the mixing stage and can probably better carve out EQ so that the sidechain compression may not be necessary. All that said, on my guitars, my individual tracks, I didn't have Infinistrip, but I think that I did run it on the guitar bus. I've got T-Rex bus comp, just to help even out those two a bit, those two different guitars. Then I'm going into good old Infinistrip again. In this case, I'm running a stereo instance since I've got the guitars panned hard left and right. I'm using this 70s style preamp, which is supposed to be something like a Neve sound. I don't know that I can really explain what a Neve sound is because I've never used one. But so we've got this, which I have no clue what this is modeled after. The 60s, the 70s, like I said, looks to be like a Neve style. The 80s looks to be an SSL style. And then we've got this 90s, which I don't know what that is. And then there's one that's just called gain, which is more just it doesn't necessarily have a sound, it's just clean gain reduction or boost. One thing that I do find that I do like on this is you can choose this auto button here and set a reference level, either peak or RMS, and allow that to listen to your track, and it will gain stage for you based on whatever reference level you're looking for. Going into another filter, and I'm rolling off around, let's see, 8.6K, just to remove some of the high-end fizziness that seems to be so prominent with modeling plugins. I'm rolling off around 113 on the low end. Going through an optical compressor, once again, just to help smooth things out a little bit, and I'm running some EQ there. After this, I ran TDR Nova to pull out some more annoying frequencies. This is kind of fascinating. I'll play a section for you and turn Nova on and off. See if you guys are able to pick up the difference. Let's see, the chorus should be a pretty good spot for it. I'll start with it on, and just watch for me to click here to turn it off. Let's see. Yeah, I don't hope that you could hear that, but yeah, those frequencies were quite obnoxious. Just for the sake of argument, let's put that in solo, and I will try that same thing again with it off and on. I'll start with it on, and then turn it off, and see if you can spot the difference. Interesting how that works. There's a lot of people that were on the Discord server earlier today that were talking about, um, I think it's a new plugin called Drez from WA Productions that's supposed to be something along the same lines as Soothe and a couple of those other types of plugins, but I find that Nova works well. Heck, even Ria EQ works well, but one thing that I really like about Nova is the solo ability, which is, I think the control is control shift and just click on one and you can hear what it's pulling out. And once you hear those frequencies, you cannot unhear them. Let's take a look at drums. My drum setup is pretty straightforward. Basically on my drums I've got PSP Infinistrip on every channel. Yeah, that's it's weird. I used to not be able to hear that stuff. Gosh, it's, as I think about how long I've been doing this, I mean, I guess given how long I've been doing it, I should be a lot better than I am, but admittedly, I've just kind of dabbled at it for a long time, as many of us do. This is not my day job. But yeah, now that stuff, it seems like an ice pick in the ear. I'm almost to the point to where I can call off frequencies, to call off the numerical frequencies just from hearing something. I'm amazed at how accurate I've gotten at that. Kind of like the same feeling you get when you guess at what size Allen wrench something should be and you're right. But when I start off on a drum tracking session, I don't have all of these folders. I make those after the fact. I've got a template that I've got for my drum set that's got all the mics already routed and an instance of PSP Infinistrip on all of them. Those will all be mono with the exception of these buses. Like I've got my overheads now into an overheads bus, and I've got a stereo instance of Infinistrip on there. Not doing a whole heck of a lot with this other than rolling off some low end and trying to... I use some compression on that to help tame some of the snare transients in the overheads. And it looks like I probably got some EQ in there as well. I've got an instance of it on the individual tracks as well, and it looks like I am doing probably nothing. Okay, I've got some drive on there for some saturation. I tend to have it on there just in case, I guess to add a little bit of saturation and do some control F needed, but I tend to do more at the bus level for both my overheads and my room mics. How do I handle phase consistency on the drums? With a tape measure. I actually measure my overheads to make sure that they are as close to identical as possible as far as the distance from the center of the drum set. And before I start, let me expand some of my drums and I'll show you. Right now we're looking at the comp of everything, so let me bring my original tracks back into place here, which I guess it's not going to show there because that's not actually a track, so it's a folder. I think we only did one take on this. Yeah, there's really not a lot to show you here. We only did one take on this on the drums, so what I do is before I start actually editing anything, now I brought all this into a comp lane first so I can edit it and leave the source completely untouched, but before I started actually cutting this, I put the things into the folders. That's why I make my folders, because that creates an aggregate waveform where you can see the cumulative effect. So, for example, if I were to turn off my grouping, which that's the wrong button, Alt-Shift-G, and if you take a look at this transient right here, I'm going to take my hat side room mic and move it, and you can see that that is moving, and it is no longer in line with the ride side room mic. So essentially, I will make sure before I start cutting that these things are lined up as well as possible. They're not going to be 100% identical, but I want to make sure that the hills and valleys are as close to lined up as possible. And it's a weird kind of thing because in real life, things are different distances from each other physically. So I think that the expectation of having 100% perfect alignment is, I'm not going to say that it's not important. Let me get my grouping turned back on, sorry. I want to make sure I don't break anything here. But I don't think that it's as critical as many would make it out to be, if that makes any sense at all. I know that there are timeline plugins. I have tried them, and I found that I'm trying to not sound cocky here because I am nowhere near perfect. I think I just don't worry about it quite as much. That's another one of those things where, while it is important, it's been pushed so much from so many YouTube personalities that may get a percentage of sales from pushing certain plugins, that we've been led to believe that we have to have these plugins to make good music. And when you consider the fact that these time alignment plugins are relatively new, meaning that we've had decades of good music that didn't have that stuff, I'd really just go back to the old school methods of just making measurements and doing a few tests and getting things sounding as good as I can at the source. And I think that's really about all I can say about it. If you work really hard at getting things right at the source, you'll find you'll need less plugins and less magic tricks. Just putting the things into a folder, you can pretty well see whether they're lined up or not. And as I look through this aggregate waveform, essentially what I'm looking for is anything that is wildly different. Like these room mics, they're pretty well lined up, you can see here. They are not perfect. I mean, like I can see there that they were probably about a sample or two off, but it's not enough to worry about. Now, if they were wildly different, then I would be able to hear that. So I guess I'm just not trying to hunt for problems that don't necessarily exist unless I hear a real problem. There's not to say there's not problems on here, I just haven't heard it yet. I hope that made sense. I don't know, I think I went off on a tangent and went into one of my old man rants. I am doing a little bit more processing on a few of these things. It looks like I had an EQ here on the toms that I turned off for whatever reason, so let's take a look at what I'm doing on the toms. I tend to do a little bit more processing there. Did I miss the button? Yeah, I did. Okay. So on my toms, I do use a gate. I know a lot of people like to just go ahead and cut out the toms, like to clean them up and only have the transients. I just use a gate on them. Sometimes I'll use an expander instead. But if I go to this pre-chorus here, let's see if I can find the beginning of it. And let's just mute, or solo tom 1. I'll turn this gate off. My rack tom has a tendency to have a good bit of resonance with the kick drum because of the way that I've got it situated. So that's why I use this gate, is just to prevent it from firing when it's not needed. Let's see, we got a couple tom hits coming up here, so let's see what we got here with the... And of course you could hear that compressor kick in there as well. Actually the intro would probably be a better place. Let's see here. And that sounds really weird because of that resonance, but if I take that, if I re-enable the gate, it's clean until that tom hits. And without that extra resonance, that compressor sounded a lot better. It didn't have that clicky sound like it did before. So with all of that in context, I mean, the toms, I think, sound quite good. And of course a lot more of that tom sound. I've got the direct mic sound, but I've also got the toms in the overheads and the toms in the room. My room mics, they are back behind my video monitors here. I've got a couple of Golden Age Project FC3 large diaphragm condensers. And the room mics, I will say I follow one of the classic YouTube tropes here by kind of crushing my room mics a bit. I like the way it sounds. So if we take a listen to those rooms isolated... just adds a bit of a bit of compression and some grittiness. I like that, a little bit of drive on there, just to, I don't know, just I don't really know what I like about it other than just it sounds crunchy, and I dig that. Outside of that, I don't think I have any more plugins of interest on this. Let's see, I think I've got some stuff on the snare. Well, I've got my snares folder. Of course, I've got Infinistrip on my snare top and snare bottom. Looks like I am running a gate on my snare top. My snare bottom, I'm not gating. I'm just filtering out some low end so it doesn't pick up quite as much of the kick, and I'm running a bit of drive on it and some EQ. And then I've got my snares bus. I'm running some EQ there, the T-Rex EQ81, which I've got that set to mic mode. The mic versus line has a little bit of a different sound to it. It's very subtle, but you get a little bit more drive of sorts. I think there's a slight volume boost there too, but I'm using this, well, I'm using it as an EQ to shape the sound. I don't know why I went there. And I'm also using the T-Rex 76 Black, which is just a 1176. So if I solo my snare, and I do not necessarily recommend mixing things in solo, but here is my snare. Let me get to this intro. That's a good spot. Oh, sorry, I got my room mic still on solo. I missed that. Now let's try that same thing. Let's see. I'll turn my plugins off here. I feel like my kick needs some work. I'm not necessarily fond of the EQ on that right now, but I mean, I have to remember what phase I'm in. I'm still tracking things. I've got to re-record the drums, I've got to re-record my guitar, and I've got to record the vocals. It's sounding pretty good as it is now, but I don't know. I feel like my kick needs some more work. Polarity flip on the snare. I've got that done at the source. Or at least I thought I did. Interesting. Let me go back and look now that you say that, because I think I used to have that on my template. Did I not? You got me curious. Let's go look at those snares. Looks like somebody didn't bother lining up their snares quite right. Well, let's flip one and see what it sounds like. It may not make a diff. John, I'm not sure that I hear a difference. I'm not saying it ain't there, but I don't know that I hear one. I could have sworn that I had that done either in the template or at the source in my audio interface. Makes me want to look at that again and make sure. Here's my, no, I do not have it. I think that I used to before I built this new computer, and it looks like the Evo doesn't necessarily save all that stuff. I mean, there is an option in here to save a standalone state, and I guess I didn't do that. But I find it interesting that those look to be about right. They are off some. Let me find some more prominent hits and just take a look. Yeah, that's interesting. You don't really look bad. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I have historically flipped it in the interface, and I don't have a clue how I missed it this time. I wonder if I looked at these and was dragging them to line them up and missed, because as I look at this, their starting points are a little bit off. Let's try it in solo. Good old solo. This is going to be probably the most annoying sound you've ever heard, but we'll be alright. Interesting. I don't know that I hear much of a difference there. Maybe I got lucky. Oh, still on repeat. Didn't mean to do that. Oh, what mic? I'm gonna have to lean this way to read that. Give me just a sec. Okay, vocal mics. I've got a few. I use this one sometimes. This is a Rode Pod mic. If I'm doing screaming, I tend to use this because it handles it well. I've also got a Lewitt something or other. I gotta look and see what it is now. Is that right? No, that's not it, because I definitely paid more than it for it. I don't know, I got a Lewitt something or other. Give me a sec. Let's see, the Lewitt is... Oh, it's the 441 Flex. I knew it had a 4 in it. So yeah, I've got this hang on a sec. Where is this? The 441 Flex. Which, what I like about this is it has a polarity, like, oh my gosh, my English is bad today. You can choose from several different polar patterns. Sorry, I was off axis there. You can choose from several different polar patterns, and I love that you can actually make this reverse addressed, but still have your controls on the back. So if you wanted to put this up against a guitar cab, you can put it that way, and then just press the button to change it to where it listens more actively on the back. But this is a really good mic for, I guess, for certain voices. And then I've got the, sometimes I'll pull these Golden Age project mics that I've got for my room mics and use them for vocals. And I've also got another Lewitt handheld that I actually like quite a bit. I use it primarily for live performance, but I also like it for recording here. It's this cheap thing. Oh, sorry, you can't see my screen. Let me go back. The MTP 250DM. It's only $100, and its rejection from the rear is fantastic. So that's what makes it really great for live, but it also handles like more aggressive vocals really well. I don't have a whole lot of, well, I guess I've got a lot of mics when you consider the stuff that's on my drums, but for vocal mics I've just got like maybe 4. I've probably gotten rid of more than I've kept. That's one thing that I've never really had a huge budget for microphones, so I've not bought a ton of the more popular mics. I wouldn't mind trying them, but I mean, this is just a project studio, and if I were to buy a $10,000 mic today, it would probably take me until I'm dead to recover my investment. So I like experimenting with some lesser expensive mics and just seeing what kind of a sound I can get out of them. And I found out of all the mics that I have, I really like this MTP 250DM probably the best. I tend to use this one a lot, the Rode Pod mic, just because it's an easy one to stick in front of your face. But yeah, John, I agree. I wasn't wasn't hearing a whole lot of difference, at least not enough to bother with it. And the same with I think with the overheads, with the room mics, I spent a lot more time making sure that those were pretty close. And one thing I didn't do that a lot of people do, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, John, is the room mics, like my overheads and my snare transients from the direct mic, I did try to get them pretty close to lined up. Oh, you got to go. I will maybe throw this question to you on Discord, but for anybody else that wants to know the train of thought I was on, I don't bother lining up my room mic snare transient with the direct mic, and it's because of physics, just the way that I think about it. My room mics are all the way across the room, from the snare drum, so the chances of the snare the chances of the snare transient hitting the direct mic at the exact time of the room mics is a physical impossibility. So why would I want to line up my room mics exactly with it? I mean, that's just how it sounds in the room. I'm going to hear that snare just a split second later from across the room versus right in front of it. So that difference between when the transients are hitting the mics is what essentially gives you that room sound and gives you a sense of presence and depth. Yeah, those Lewitt mics, they've got. I know that's another thing that people are talking about now is this new Ray. I've not done a lot of investigation on this because, once again, I have a tendency to sometimes just. I have a tendency to, I guess, tune out sometimes when everybody on YouTube is talking about something. I don't know why. I guess I'm just built that way, but I don't know. It's just. It makes me think that people are being paid to represent a product, which they probably are, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've got to eat. I've come to appreciate electricity and running water, so I like to get paid for my work too. But this one, if I understand correctly, it's got some type of proximity sensors on it, and it will automatically adjust its gain based on distance or something to that effect. I guess if you really want to see more about it, feel free to look it up on their site or just go and look at YouTube and you're sure to find it. Now that's cool. I did not know that it had this feature. Now I'm suddenly interested. This mute based on distance is really cool. So let's look at it. Sensor-based Aura technology. Continuously measures your distance, opening up the groundbreaking possibilities for interacting with your microphone. I'm not sure what that does. Okay, the Ray can adapt your levels and tone on the fly. Focus on your performance while creating flawless recordings for podcasts, content, live streaming, or music production. That actually may be kind of useful for me. I tend to be quiet, and maybe it will auto-gain itself depending on my proximity to the mic. I'm hoping you guys are hearing me okay today. I definitely like that automatic mute though. That may be worth the money just to have it automatically mute when you step away. That is really cool. I wouldn't mind having a set of Lewitt drum mics, but I really like the Audix mics that I've got. So on my drums, I'm running. Well, let's see. Yeah, this is what I'm running on my drums. I've got the Audix DP7 kit. So, except the i5, which is the snare mic, I am running that on the snare bottom. And I think I got that model number right. On the snare top, I'm running the. Oh, that guy's talking.
To be a part of this music.
Oh, that's Aaron Spears. He passed away.
Playing with artists like
mute that real quick. So yeah, I've got the DM20. We'll just pull this up at Sweetwater so I can stop that video from playing there. Yeah, so this is what I've got on my snare top. I wouldn't mind having a full set of these. I just bought one of them to test first because they are kind of pricey for one mic. You can get a 3-pack for $1,000, but as you can see, I bought my 7-piece kit for about $1,000. But this is a pretty robust. This thing is built like a tank. The rejection on it is fantastic, and that gooseneck allows for really... Well, that gooseneck is kind of difficult to bend, but once you get it in place, it stays put. Let's take a listen to this snare top here. Get my effects pulled back up here. So if I take this gate off of the snare top, here's what we get through a more busy part. So yes, you can hear the rest of the kit, but you can hear that snare transient plain as day. If I completely turn off the effects there on the snare top, here is the raw mic. if I turn the effects back on. Now that gate, I'm not allowing it to completely shut it off. I could do this, but I tend to use it more like an expander. I'll show you one trick that I like to do with panning. By default, Reaper likes to have your pan knobs like this, which this is the stereo balance pan mode. On certain things like my drums folder, I will right click that and change my pan mode to stereo pan instead of stereo balance. And what that does is it still gives me the left and right pan, but I've also got a width knob, and I run my drums at 90% width. That way I can run my guitars 100% left and 100% right and have the drums pulled inward just a little bit so that those guitars sound a bit more separated. I know that a lot of people like to use LCR panning, which if you're not familiar with that, you will have three choices for panning on anything. It's either left, center, or right. For the most part, I kind of follow that, but I do bring my drums in 90%. Basically, if I set this to 90% width, it's, well, as the name would suggest, it's not going to fill the entire stereo spectrum, but it'll bring it inward a little bit. With that said, anything that I pan hard left or right that's inside of that folder will be limited to that 90% width. So I can pan my toms 100% left, but it's in the drums folder, so it's only going to be 90% one way or the other. Just takes a little bit of thought out of the whole thing. And my toms, I don't have them panned LCR. I've got like... I did these kind of weird, if I'm honest. I thought about it from how it's viewed by the overheads and tried my best to place them in the stereo image in the same fashion that it would be seen by the microphones. It's probably off a little bit just because I wanted to create a little bit more width, because I've got one rack tom that is just, let's see, it's probably about 11 o'clock from the snare position, and then I've got two floor toms. So it's kind of hard to make that. It doesn't make sense in my head to make that an LCR panning because I don't have a tom that's dead center, and my rack tom is not completely left. My floor tom, I'd say, is, and I can actually push that over some more, or my second floor tom, I should say. Let's take a listen to this ending here. You know, I was thinking about the ending, how he played it live in rehearsal the other day, and that's not recorded yet, so there's not any toms there. Let's try the verse. I talked earlier about Infinistrip and the difference in the sound in these preamps, and it's something that I would have to say it does take some time to learn to hear. I think it's because, well, I guess we're not accustomed to listen for such subtle changes. But to my ear, when I changed this from the 70s preamp to the 80s, there was a significant difference. I want to play through a section of this again, and you guys tell me in the comments if you are able to hear this or not. Let's start back here at the verse. To my ear, it sounds like there is a significant difference between the 70s preamp and the 80s preamp, potentially in how the saturation affects the tone. It sounds like the pre-80s is a bit more of a rich tone. I don't really know how to explain it other than there may be more or different types of harmonics that are introduced. And it seemed like the EQ, I guess the EQ curves of the preamp, if that's a proper term, have changed. Let me play that chorus because I think that's where I heard it the most because of the difference in the guitars there. So I'll start at the 60s preamp and I'll kind of go through them with that section on repeat and see how it feels. Yeah, Sean, I'm not sure that I've ever seen that particular message pop up in a live stream. It just says, well, I guess you see the same thing. Welcome to Keepers of the Coffee Pot. I don't know how long ago I set that up, but it's hard for me to, I don't know, with my two monitors and my eyesight, and it's just hard to see a lot of the stuff that's going on over there, but most definitely, thank you. Is there any more questions from anybody there? Is there anything else I can show you? Because it's getting probably close to my bedtime here pretty soon. I gotta be at work in the morning. There's not a lot that I've got going on my... I know that someone had asked about my effects chain earlier. I'm not running a lot on my master at the moment. I'm just running some bus compression with the T-Rex bus compressor. Some people ask me why I use T-Rex, because I was able to get it at a good price. That is quite frankly it. I got like the entire T-Rex bundle for maybe $100. And I found that a lot of it is pretty intuitive to use and it sounds good. I like that they've got left and right or mid-side controls on most of their plugins. And then, of course, I've already mentioned the PSP Infinistrip. And in this case, I'm running, after listening to them a little bit, what does that say? Watching on my... I'm going to have to pull that up in Studio and see what that says. Forgive me. Oh, on TV. And there I can see this a lot better. Maybe I should just put this over here on the other screen because that's much easier to see than what it is on my computer. I don't know, in OBS. Is this all sounding okay on your TV? I don't know if that's the other thing too. Is like it seems like the more that you become aware of this stuff, you'll hear these differences in like everything. But there was a significant difference in these preamp channels, and I really liked the rich fullness of this 80s preamp as I listened back through that chorus, so I left that on. Whereas before I was on the 70s model. I'm rolling off a little bit more low end, and I tend to do a roll off around 30 to 40 hertz on most channels. Some channels even more, just depending on what the instrument is. Like for my overheads, I roll off usually anywhere between 200 to 600, depending on what sounds are all in there. 4:30 in the morning. Wow. I am not sure where you are, but it is 10:30 here. 10:30 at night. And I have a tendency to have insomnia-induced nights at times. That's usually when I end up doing a weird stream like this and like completely unexpected because I just can't sleep either. I'd actually just come in here to update a driver and take a look at that OBS problem, and then I just thought, let me fix these guitars before bed, and I'll just put on the camera and see who shows up. This old timer, this is one of the compressor models, but this was recently added to PSP Infinistrip. You've also got the opto compressor, the FET, and the VCA. The old timer, I'm not sure what that is modeled after. I know that PSP AudioWare just has one of their own. Let's see, where was it that they give you the... I need the manual. If you're ever able to get this on sale, I highly recommend it. It's $200, but even if I didn't have it today, knowing what I know now, I would still shell out the $200 for it. I really feel that it's worth every penny. Oh, in the UK. Let's see, VCA. Oh, that's interesting. They don't even mention the old timer in here. Outdated manual. Well, that's fun. Trying to remember, where did I see the change logs on this? Features. Okay, old timer, inspired by the PSP old timer ME. Mastering compressor of sorts. Well, that's where I've got it, is on my mastering chain. I'm not sure what that does different, but I kind of like the sound of it. Another thing that I like about Infinistrip is as you change through these modules, your settings stay exactly where they are, unless there's a drastic difference from one to the other, but that really helps you to hear the difference between the modules because it keeps the same settings. So if I run that same thing and change the compressor type, let's see if we can spot a difference. If I can play. Now that's interesting. When I switch from the opto to the old timer, it seems like the old timer brings those guitars more forward, but in a pleasing way. So I'm going to start with it on this opto, and it'll sound like the guitar's a bit more distant, but they become more present with the old timer with the same settings. There was another channel strip that I'd tried out recently. I think it was from Noisash. I ended up not buying it, but if you are new to channel strips and want to play around with some, I would really recommend checking out this. What is it called? Prestige Racks. It's on sale now for $29.99. It doesn't have as many things as Infinistrip, but it sounds really, really good, like insanely good. The only reason I ended up not getting it, which I may, since it's only $30 now, I may just get it anyway. The one thing that I really like about Infinistrip is that it's zero latency. So, excuse me. So if I'm streaming, particularly if I'm playing drums, I've got this on my drums because I can do my processing with no latency on a stream, and my camera and audio are in perfect sync with each other. Well, they may be a few milliseconds off, but the zero latency was a big deal for me. But for $30, so it's got an EQ, compressor, preamp, a de-esser, delay, the reverb. The reverb sounded really cool, but I kind of didn't really use it. Hey, Wanchus, why are either one of us awake right now? What time is it there? Or I don't remember if we're in the same time zone or not. Put coffee in there. Somebody watched that video with the coffee. I've had that song stuck in my head for a few days now. I admittedly am a Frank Sinatra lover. Okay, so it does. What is this? 5 EQs. Analog Obsession had a new channel strip that I have not checked out. Not that I'm going to now, because like I said earlier with plugins. Now I gotta admit, I do get excited when I see plugins, and I do like kind of trying stuff. Yeah, it's still about $200, but I think it's well worth it. I'm curious to try this, but like I said, I want to stick with what I got, at least for right now. I'll probably grab this at some point and test drive and A/B it and see if it's something that works well for me. Yeah, Wanchus, we were looking at Infinistrip, which I tend to show that every time I stream because I believe in it. I mean, it costs a little bit, but also you may have noticed that I'm not using anything that has a subscription. I'm just not a fan of subscriptions right now. I get it because you can always get the latest and greatest, and you've always got support, but quite frankly, how often do you have to get support for a plugin that, paid support versus just reading a frequently asked questions or putting in a trouble ticket of some sort? I just don't like hemorrhaging money every month for something that's just kind of a hobby. But this thing for $30 would make a fantastic first channel strip for somebody. Oh, 11:37. You are 1 hour ahead. And Wanchus, you are an hour behind me. Yeah, the thing for me with the channel strips is having the most commonly used tools at your fingertips. And, we were talking earlier. Oh, and those of you who are not aware of Wanchus, he runs a channel called Sounds Human. Let me get that pulled up real quick. Boop. This is Wanchus's channel, which I will post a link in here. Now he is... Oh, did that work? I'm not sure that actually posted a link or not. I don't think it did. Oh, that is clickable. Cool. Or did it? Nope, I don't think that posted the link. Let me try that again. Somebody tell me if that's clickable to them. It's not for me. But if you look up Sounds Human, he is a properly trained, like a real audio engineer. I am very much a hobbyist, but he knows his science and is very well versed in Reaper and several other DAWs, and is an all-around great guy. So kindly go over to his channel and show him some love, because he deserves a whole lot more than the subs that he's got. And he speaks multiple languages, which helps. What was I saying though? Oh, channel strips. Yeah, having your most commonly used tools at your fingertips. When you think about the typical console, I mean, that's what they have is just a handful of things. You can do most of what you need with a preamp to give you some saturation, a little bit of drive, and some semblance of volume control if you want to push the preamp to get some distortion and saturation. EQ, compression, and really that's your basics. Is preamp, EQ, and compression. You can do 90% of what you need with those basics. And even if you don't have, something I was thinking about doing a video for this, but I still haven't experimented to see if it works. So let's play for a minute. Make me a test channel here. And let's go into effects. And let's do this may take me a second to find this. Nonlinear processor. And reacomp, EQ. Okay, so I've made a channel strip. Now what I'm curious to do is see if I can put these into a container. How do you rename this? Somebody help me read. I could have sworn, okay, there we go, rename effects, and you can just hit F2, so that's cool. Ria channel strip. Alright, so now I've got Ria channel strip. If you're not familiar with what I just did there, which this is actually my first time even trying it, Reaper 7 has introduced effects containers where you can take a group of plugins and put them into a container, so turning that off will effectively turn off all of these. But this way I've got something similar to a channel strip where I've got my drive, so I can add some saturation there. Then I've got my compressor and EQ, and I can of course rearrange the order of them. Yeah, and then if I'd like, I can save that, so it's I've got a reusable channel strip of sorts made from stock Reaper plugins. That's pretty cool. I'll have to do that. Yeah, I guess I'll have to do that and make a video, because that is kind of neat. It's not exactly the same because I still have to kind of click between these three, but it gives me everything right there in one, which is pretty nice. If I wanted to add something after the fact, let's see. Get one of my other channel strips. Filters. I can add a filter. Let's see here. I think there's like a high pass or low pass in here. RBJ high pass, low pass. So let's put that on the front. Now in this case, we go from the filter to compressor. But then again, they've got this section over here which controls your input gain and drive. That actually comes before this in the circuit. It's just the physical placement's a little bit different. An expander, a gate, yeah, that would be a good one to add. Got a downward expander, which is usually what I would be interested in. Put the drive in there, then my gate. This order is throwing me because I'm not 100% sure if the signal chain follows this in this direction. But we'll see. We've got our. Well, let's pop this off to the side, and then we can look at this. So we've got our. We'll start with our drive because that's actually first in the circuit, even though it's over here. And then we'll go into our filter. So we've got high pass and low pass. There's more gain adjustment there. Then into the compressor. And then the downward expander. And then EQ. Which this is just a 3-band EQ, whereas here we've got infinite. So if we'd like, we could... I think there's a 1073 EQ. Which would give us more of a Neve style 3-band EQ. We can put that up there. I guess we can be flexible and have both. But it's just pretty cool that you can make your own channel strip of sorts here. And if I like this, I can right click this and I should be able to save this. I think I'm thinking about saving a whole, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, what is the word? Like an effects chain. I wonder if that shows up now. No, it doesn't. Click on the pre-done bottom right in the EQ. It places the filters before. Yeah, so you can rearrange your order there. Why am I feel like I am forgetting how to, okay, that's save effects chain, but I wonder if I can save just that container. Save selected as effects chain. I guess that could do it. Alright, so theoretically, and if that didn't work, it's whatever, but I should be able to... Yeah, there is my read channel strip that I just made. Cool. So we made a channel strip. Yeah, you know, I've not used these Brainworks plugins. I built a new PC, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to test these to see if they still had that lag like I did on my old one, and they seem to be behaving. For those who aren't aware, I had an issue with a lot of the Brainworks and Plugin Alliance plugins where it would take about a 5-second delay for each plugin to load. And on my new system, let's see here. The thing that was weird about it is it didn't happen on that same system before certain updates that they put in. So if I go and look up console, and let's pull up console in, which is one that I like, it loads pretty quickly. Now my old system was a Ryzen 7 2700 with 64 gigs of RAM. My new one is an i9 with 64 gigs of RAM. I switched to the i9 because the Intel chipset is a lot better for me with my video editing with the quick sync. But the load time on these got to be ridiculous. Like if I loaded an old plugin that was pretty heavy with their channel strips, I could go make a sandwich and come back and it still may not be loaded. It was introduced when they made a change to the security in their plugins to make it call home or something to that effect every time you loaded it, and it would stall for every instance of the plugin. Like if you went to launch a plugin, well, let me close this out. Let's get rid of this track. Make sure I have saved. And if I go to open Reaper, that same project, you can, like right there where it's showing the plugins loading, that would stall for a very long time on each Plugin Alliance plugin. And I just stopped using them because it became problematic. So I'm excited to know that they're working a lot better now. Matter of fact, let's see, Plugin Alliance. I own a bunch of those because they used to send me those coupons all the time. I don't know if there's anything in here that I really want to use, but I'm just kind of curious to look through here and remember what I had. I did like this Bax EQ. One thing that I don't like about these plugins, though, is they are not scalable. I mean, they still have yet to make these scale, which is insane. So that's their mastering EQ, or otherwise I can go to my IK Multimedia stuff and their master EQ, which it loads quickly, but it's scalable, which is great for old eyes such as mine. Does pretty much the same stuff as that other plugin. I've got mid-side processing or left and right or both at the same time, which I thought was really cool. And I guess something that I would often do on this is just use the left and right processing. Would use the mid-side processing to change the EQ a little bit and maybe suck some of the low end out of the sides and bump it up a little bit in the center. Basically just EQ my mid and sides a little bit different to help create the illusion of width. There's a lot of really good plugins in here. I could have sworn I had a tape plugin somewhere. Yeah, I've got one of the tape plugins on my drums. Let's see what that does. It's off currently. Yeah, I've used chow tape. It's been quite some time. Let's take a look. Yeah, I feel like that one it had more controls than I had trouble understanding this if I recall, and some of it I'm a bit of a manual fanatic, but sadly I also have trouble reading because of dyslexia, so I had a hard time understanding this one and just gave up on it. It did sound good, and I know that Air Windows also has a free saturation, like tape saturation. I think it's just called 2Tape. I haven't used any of his plugins in quite some time. Yeah, this thing sounded pretty good. I actually liked that quite a bit. But I've got a handful of different tape plugins from IK Multimedia, and I used to use Magnatech from Black Rooster Audio. Or Magnetite, I think it's called. But I stopped using the Black Rooster makes some good stuff, but one thing that was bothersome to me about them, which is not that big of a deal, but it's I guess a personal choice, is they have not switched to VST3, probably because of licensing costs with Steinberg. But I tend to just run the VST3 variants of plugins anymore instead of VST, with the exception of replugs, just because OBS doesn't accept VST 3. And neither does DaVinci Resolve, which is what I use for my video editing. But yeah, that Magnetite sounded really good, and their plugins are... It's weird that I got off in this plugin discussion because I so seldom talk about plugins, really. And there's a handful of obscure plugin manufacturers that I like. Klanghelm is another. Which that reminds me, I have not reinstalled some of my stuff from them. I own this saturation plugin is really good. I don't like the names of their plugins because I can never think of, like, when I'm looking for one, I don't remember what they're called. But SDRR, I don't know what that stands for. It's probably in here somewhere. But this has, I think, 4 different models and a lot of controls. I have to use the manual every time that I use this, but it sounds freaking fantastic. Yeah, 4 different models. There's Tube, Digi, Fuzz, and Dusk, and they all sound drastically different. MJUC, I've not used the full-blown one. I did play with the MJUC Junior and liked it. I've wanted the full one. It's only 24 pounds. I don't know what that equates to in dollars, but somewhere around $24, $25. It's like I've got so many compressors, and I get back into, I don't know, it's like I like having access to some of this stuff, but it can be overwhelming sometimes because you got so many plugins and can't remember what you have. So when I went back and, well, once I built this new rig, I didn't install all the stuff that I had previously. Let's see here. And now I can't read again. I hate when this happens. Music production, installers. Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff in my installer collection, but I haven't installed much of it. Tone Empire, I own Loch Ness 2, which is really good, but I haven't reinstalled it. That's one, that is one that's very similar to, gosh, it's a saturator from a Devil-Lock. It's similar to Devil-Lock, but it's cheaper. Yeah, this is $25, and it sounds absolutely amazing. If you like to crush the living daylights out of some drums or anything else too, but it has a very pleasing distortion to it. Neural Q, I think I got that for free and never used it. I've got a few TuneTrack products that I don't have installed. Like I've got Easy Drummer, but I have drums like right behind me, so I just play. Voxingo, it looks like I've got some stuff there that I have. Looks like I downloaded those in 2020 and have not used them. Wilkinson Audio, I bought D-Bleeder many moons ago to help save a project where I recorded a track, and I did not do a very good job of placing the microphone, so I used Wilkinson debleeder to help save me because the snare drums, it caught so much hi-hat that I couldn't process it properly. Soft amp I no longer have installed and really don't care. I don't know what I had. I think soft tube, I may have had a saturator. I'm going to get rid of that. That's for a meter. I'll need to get an update of that if I want to use it at all. I'll delete that. Tokyo Dawn, I did try using Prism, and I ended up getting rid of it. If I recall, I think that is similar to Span, except you can't solo bands. And that was a big deal for me. Prism was interesting, but I ended up going right back to Span. If you're not familiar with Span, assuming I have it installed, I don't. That is a freebie from Vox Ingo. It's a spectrum analyzer. And it's a spectrum analyzer, but just a really good one. And I like that you can solo a band and listen to it. Yeah, I've got Nova as well, but Span I feel is great for the correlation meter and to be able to listen to stuff without changing it. With Nova, it's kind of hard to listen to a frequency without changing it because you end up inadvertently moving, like either boosting or cutting whatever you're soloing. What else I got in here? Slate Digital, I've got Trigger, but I don't have it installed and don't use it. Pulsar Smasher, I think I got that for free. It looks like 4 years ago. Have not used it in forever. I tried this Tins from Klanghelm. That is a reverb plugin, but I didn't like it. And my SDRR is from 2023. I'll probably install that later and update it to a more recent version. Little Clippers not installed. Lost in 70s, they had a Hammond organ freebie that I used in one project. Plugin Alliance junk, of course. Yeah, I don't have a lot in here. Oh, my Freak Show Industry stuff and a few things from Glitch Machines. Audio Assault, I like them quite a bit because they have really good plugins for really cheap, and they sound good. They are sometimes released with a few bugs, but Alex is very responsive to bug reports and tends to fix things very quickly. And as you guys saw when we were running through the song, all of my guitar stuff and bass stuff is going through Audio Assault amp sims. Sometimes I'll record live amps, but I mean my studio is in my home and I want to try to be respectful of noise, so I tend to use plugins a bit more. My drums, I just record those live. I don't bother with plugins for that, but we tend to get that stuff done pretty quick. Whereas the guitars can sometimes take a bit longer to track properly. I don't know that I got much of anything else left to say. Of course, the only other plugins on here that I have not covered are Reatune, which it's a tuner. I mean, you can use it for tuning vocals, but I use this for a tuner for the guitars and just tune between every take. Outside of that, I've got a synth metronome, which what I do with that is I will just use Reasynth, and well, it looks like I don't even have that going anymore. Oh, I know what I did with that. I was feeding this to the drummer's ear. So I've got a click track, but I've passed that through this synth metronome track into this audio to MIDI drum trigger. Oh wait, and it just so it sounds like this. I think you should be able to hear this anyway. So that sound was just easier for the drummer to hear than the click of the metronome. So I've got that routed to, I can't read now. Yeah, it's routed to this drum monitor track, which does not feed through my mains. This just goes to a hardware output, and there's a headphone amp back there at the drum kit. So he's able to control his own mix and can hear what he needs to hear without affecting this. Outside of that, I have no other plugins. Of course, the loudness meter, which is built into Reaper. I think it's 11 o'clock now. I think I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you guys all for joining me again for yet another unplanned stream. Always amazed to see you guys show up. If you like the gosh, I feel like I'm doing one of my recorded videos. If you like the content you've been seeing, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee. Hold on. I like coffee. Patreon or Super Thanks links below. Visit us on Discord and engage with other Reaper users. We'll see you next time. See, I say that all the time at the end of all my videos, and I need to start saying it in my live streams. And I guess that's about it. I feel like I need to go through the whole thank you thing all over again, but I'm going to go to bed. We'll catch you guys later, and thanks again for stopping by. We'll see you.